All right. I don't know if we have any popped in yet, but I'm gonna hopefully just start populating here in just a second. All right, if you're just coming in, you have found your way to the Being Marketers webcast. Welcome. We'd love for you to jump into chat right away as you get settled. Tell us where you're joining from, and then also answer this thought-provoking question. Justin, take it away. Give our audience the thought-provoking question.
What is the last thing you bought off a website that wasn't Amazon or a major retailer? What was the last thing? What was the product that you bought or service that you bought? Not from Amazon or Walmart or Target or something.
I like to use the Target app to order and then pick up. That's my favorite.
Yeah, that is slick too.
Not a website, but I'm a big fan of that app. Let us know. So
Cool. We got a Chicago and a bobblehead. We have Phoenix and a jacket from Pakistan.
Ooh.
From Etsy. That would be my answer too. I think the last thing I bought off of that wasn't on Amazon was on Etsy. So
it's a good place to look first. I think it's a great, you can find all kinds of cool stuff there.
Right.
I love Etsy.
And so Andy, I have to ask about the bobblehead. Was it a bobblehead of you or someone else?
When people have a 10-year anniversary here, we buy them 10 gifts and we spend weeks thinking about what weird, cool stuff to get for them. And so we have 3 10-year anniversaries this year. So we're celebrating them all here at the holiday party. And several of them are getting bobbleheads. It's actually, I spoke at an event where they gave me this. Cute, right?
It's really cute. Yeah.
It's like $100 or something like that. Highly recommended. Just upload some pictures and they send you a proof.
If you're just coming in, the question before we kick off with Andy is, well, post in chat where you're calling in from, and then what is the last thing you bought on the internet, not from Amazon?
So a Ghostbusters t-shirt from an independent artist. Love it. Nice. I didn't purchase this, but I've been looking on Uncommon Goods for holiday gifts because I love their brand and what they stand for, and I just love unusual things. And it's responsibly sourced products too.
Great.
The question is, what is the last thing you bought? Thank you, Kat. Kat is our chief of staff and our audience ambassador, and she's in the chat restating things. So thanks, chat. Thanks, Kat, for putting that in the chat. What is the last thing you bought online, not from Amazon? What site was it? What did you buy? And if you want to tell us where you're joining from, that's great.
Another thing another category that beats Amazon is custom products. I ordered a jigsaw. I uploaded a picture of my kids and ordered a jigsaw puzzle made out of that picture for one of their grandparents. There's little niches that Amazon doesn't really even, can't really touch because it's like a UX thing, right? You got to upload the picture and choose the size and the number of puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
It's a great gift.
I think I just decided what to get my mother-in-law for Christmas. Thanks, Andy.
Collage.com, pillows, blankets,
she
mugs.
Puzzle, so that
puzzles,
is
yeah.
Perfect fit. Yeah.
Yep. Upload a picture and they'll make a puzzle out of it.
Sweet. Thank you.
All right.
Right. Well, we are going to get started because Justin's going to get really agitated that we're running behind schedule. He's our time cop in the Root and River universe. So welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out. We know how busy you are and how many opportunities there are to jump on meetings. You're probably in front of a screen for most of your day. So we consider it a real honor that you've chosen to be here with us on the Being Marketers webcast and to have the chance to meet Andy, who I will introduce properly in just a second. But before we do that, I want to thank all of our BEMA community members who are joining us. Thanks for being a part of our community. And if you haven't yet checked out BEMA, I definitely encourage you to do so. So the webcast is really an offshoot of our community, and it is a place for soulful and ethical marketers to be supported, to get new ideas. So either you're running marketing for your brand, your own brand, or for another brand. So we have directors of marketing, we have marketing managers, we've got solopreneurs in there. And what we do is we get together weekly. We have brand challenges that we throw out, and everyone is really engaged. And it's just it's a breath of fresh air in your day or in your week, whenever you can stop by and when you need that little bit of support or commiseration or empathy. That's what Beam is really for. So we welcome you there. If you want to check us out, the first month is always free. So now onto the webcast. So we hold these monthly, usually most times. And our goal is really to speak with what we call a defier. And these are people who are trying to change the world, their industry, or their community through their brand. So they're entrepreneurs, they represent a brand, they are a personal brand, of course, and then they also are engaged with marketing. So we're very curious about what makes them tick, the lessons that they've learned throughout their career and their area of expertise, and kind of getting a sense of what we can learn that are practical tips that we can implement in our own brands. So we have a definite expert with us today. I'm super excited to welcome Andy Crestodina to Being Marketers. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to tell everybody how awesome you are now. So Andy is the co-founder and chief marketing officer of Orbit Design Studios, which is an award-winning Chicago-based web design and development company. He is also the author of Content Chemistry, which is literally a manual for how to do a website, how to think differently about content. I mean, it's really a great resource. There's tons of graphics. There's just a plethora of information. I highly recommend that you check it out. Andy has participated, led, been a part of designing over 1,000 websites. He's written more than 500 articles, and I have seen him present. That's where we met. And what I loved about Andy is that his generosity of information and his generosity of spirit. And then when I dove in to learn about Orbit, I realized they're a B Corp, a certified B Corp, which if you're not familiar, this is a certification process that companies go through to make sure that they're making a sustainable, positive impact, both within their culture and then on the world. So we're going to talk about that. And we're just really honored to have you with us. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for joining last night, because you joined a webinar that we do, a bi-weekly webinar. So you were our host, you were our guest at Wine and Web last night, which is awesome. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It was so much fun. Now, before we dive in, because we're going to dive straight in, please, everybody, if you have questions that come up, drop them into chat. Our chief of staff, Kat, is there in chat, and she's going to be interrupting us, chiming in with questions, pointing them out in the chat. So you don't need to wait to the end. If something's coming up from something Andy shares, please just go ahead and do that. We want to make sure that we're taking advantage of the fact that this is live and you have a say in what we are going to talk about.
So one kind of an opening question related to you, Andy, is what do you say when someone asks you, what do you do in a non-business setting, so social setting, what do you say?
Well, if they're asking for my profession, I say I'm the co-founder of a web design and development company. And we work with mid-market companies around the country, and we're focused here in Chicago. And then I hopefully switch back to listening mode and learn from them instead of, I'm not going to go too deep there. If they find that very interesting, then the conversation may go from there. But that's the shortest, fastest way to give them probably the info they're looking for.
And so, Andy, one of the things that we chatted about as we were prepping for today was, and I'm just going to go straight in here, is we talked about pages on websites. And I sat in the director of marketing chair for a while, and I always like to dig in to see how the data could tell me a story. And you had pointed out something that you saw in regards to the team page on a website. And I thought it was an interesting data point, but it was a good segue into a larger discussion about what's happening with websites these days and what is kind of most important at the intersection between brand and website. So would you mind sharing with our audience a little bit about that?
Sure. So part of my role is analytics. So part of my job is to, after every website launches, to let some data accrue and then go in and review their analytics with them. Check the organic search traffic before and after, and check the conversion rate and see what the top paths are through the website. And it's just been pounded into me account after account. I've literally been in, we have access currently to 500 analytics accounts. The about section is an extremely popular click for almost everybody. It's very rare to see an analytics account where, excluding the blog, the about page isn't one of the top 3 or top 5 pages. And more specifically, the team page. You can bury that team link way down at the bottom in the footer, or make it small in the secondary kind of eyebrow. They call it the eyebrow, secondary navigation in the header. And people find it and they click it because there's some strong desire to see the people and to know who's there and to feel a connection. And I know that you guys understand this intuitively. But anyone that doesn't believe it yet, just show them their own data. The click to see who is at this company is almost always one of the top clicks, even from the first click from the homepage. Very common.
Yeah, and what do you think that reveals about people?
I have, Justin, I've heard you use the word tribal before. It feels a bit like that. People want to feel affinity. People want to know what you believe. It's kind of a tiebreaker. I mean, if you can quickly see that this company is kind of in the category that you're looking for and that you're on the right website, and you think they're probably qualified because you get some signal from the site, client logos, or some credibility or review or testimonial, like, okay, I see what they do. I see they're legit. What next? Who are these people? What do they believe? Where are they? What are their values? What are they, what are they rooting for? What are they for? What are they against? Your site's a great example, of course. The warning label kind of puts a lot out there, and that's powerful. But I think, so one, it's just people want to feel affinity and connection and have a strong desire. It's a magnetic thing. But also just faces. Facebook is called face. I mean, the word is right there in the name. It's like, people just, it's always the top of the visual hierarchy. People are looking for faces. People really want to feel a connection.
Yeah, they do. And that's one of the interesting things too about Orbit. You've made this association between empathy and websites, which I think, I mean, us being Root and River, we love that. And I was really intrigued to learn about that take. So can you tell us a little bit about what empathy has to do with website development?
Well, I sometimes describe digital marketing as just data-driven empathy. That's kind of the game. We want to use data to form and confirm hypotheses prior to taking action whenever possible. So I think the best way to think about digital is to think that really every action you take is in fact just a test, and that analytics is kind of the scoreboard that will show you if your hypothesis was correct. Every change, every idea, everything you do on a website is actually can be validated as good or bad based on engagement, with some assumptions and lots of big caveats, just through analytics and through data. So that's a big factor, is just using analytics to understand the visitor, which is kind of a giant act of empathy. But it's even more plainly, the point is more plainly made by thinking of just the opposite of empathy. I'm not sure if Emily, I said this that day we first met, was, what's the opposite of an empathetic person? It's a psychopath. That's literally what a non-empathetic person is. It's like psychopathic. They have no empathy. They don't connect with people. So your visitor has information needs, they have hopes, they have fears, they have questions, they have objections, they have biases. The extent to which you understand those things is the extent to which you can build a site that connects with them on their level and guides them to either taking action or excluding themselves and leaving the site, which is not a bad outcome either. Again, one of your points is to repel the right people as well as attract the right people. So it is, empathy is the entire game.
I've heard before that it takes empathy to be actually good at UI and UX. So that makes sense. That was from, I always forget, it's Kevin Kelly, the IDEO guy. Did I say his name? Yeah.
I know IDEO, of course, but I don't know who Kevin is.
The founder. He talks about empathy's role in like design and then this merger of thought between design thinking and human experience. And there's a new term I heard the other day called CRX, which is complex retail experience. And so where they could find you on your Instagram feed of ad for like a pair of cool pants, or you walk into a store, or you order online, or, all these, and they all get sourced differently, and the experience is different depending on how you buy it. And it seems to me that this world of digital appears to be getting more complex. While some things are simple, digital seems to remain in a level of complexity. Why do you, do you agree with that? And why do you think that is? Why do you think that complexity is there if you agree that it's there?
Well, I read an interview once with Jeff Bezos, who says that they have won by focusing on those enduring aspects and the unchanging aspects of human behavior and human desire, which is low price and speed. And so I think it's easy to overstate complexity. And it's sort of like when I'm an SEO and people ask me all the time about Google and they say, oh, I hear Google changes itself like 200 times a year. It's really kind of an overstatement. I mean, the basic things that work in search, the basic things that work in psychology, I don't think change that often. I'm currently rereading the Eugene Schwartz book from the 60s, Breakthrough Advertising, and it's solid. It's just still valid. It's like, he's like, you can't really create desire. You can amplify it, you can leverage it, you can find it and play off that, but you can't manufacture new demand for things per se. And so I think, yes, channels have diversified. There are more, Emily just said she buys stuff on a Target app. It's like, wow, do I have to play that game now? Like, there's just so many different ways. Like, what's my TikTok strategy? It's, what am I doing with marketing automation? Or there's so many. Technology drives new options and does capture consumer behavior in ways that we may want to, engage on those platforms. But the fundamentals of human psychology, I don't think change a whole lot. I'm also listening to an American history book, and you can, some of that stuff is just still the same, like it's very enduring. Like you just see these things repeat themselves over centuries. So I think that marketing changes, technology changes, opportunities change, channels change, but the fundamentals of human psychology and the importance of good empathy is forever.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And that really jives with, our approach to intrinsic branding and having it be something that you practice over, it's an agrarian, it's a cultivation practice. And it is rooted in those very same ideas around human behavior and psychology. And that's really why you have to have a strong foundation there. And then you can plug into various channels, or you can make updates to your website, or take different strategies once you have that set. Really
yeah. I was recently doing some analysis of Groupon while explaining to people the importance of urgency. And yeah, if you look at that thing, you can find that they're using a ton of trends. They're using color and visual prominence and movement and countdown clocks and act now and only so many left. But really, what are they doing? Loss aversion. Mm-hmm. It's a very old thing, right? It's a very well-known, well-understood cognitive bias that we all are subject to. Loss aversion. You're just afraid of missing an opportunity. So flash sales and Groupons and these kinds of things. So the way that they do it is very nuanced, is well tested, is playing off a lot of different, elements of, visual hierarchy. But the fundamental psychology behind it, hundreds of years old.
Yeah, so interesting. It's like that. Oh, it's FOMO. FOMO is
exactly FOMO. Yes, thank you.
Powerful thing. Yeah.
And you know what? Oh, go ahead, Justin.
I was just going to say that I've disparaged this man many times publicly, and he's dead, so it doesn't matter. But Edward Bartell, who was Freud's nephew, is considered to be the godfather of PR.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the Nazis, Bernays. Edward Bernays.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a business partner that's a fact checker. It's awesome. And yes, Edward Bernays. And so what I view digital as is much more a return to the marketplace style of marketing, where because the buyer, the visitor can ignore you, can talk back. And I think a lot of marketing people still, especially 45 and up, have this idea that digital is advertising and it follows the same rules as Bernays's rules, as far as the use of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Really mind bleeping people, which was what was really happening with what he was doing. That's why the Nazis and the Soviets and other tyrannies used his teachings in propaganda. So all of that to ask is, do you see, it sounds like based on what you're saying is that digital is kind of an extension of human interaction. It's not really advertising in the sense of what we would consider advertising. Do you agree with that, or have an alternative take?
Having been a content marketer for so long, what content marketers say about advertising is that it's the other type. There's two kinds of marketing. content marketing, which is attractive, and advertising, which is push and distraction marketing. But more to your point, I think what is happening, and the thing that I would compare it to, maybe not advertising, but it's actually just old-fashioned sales. Great web copy and great web pages and landing pages, and so much of what we see all over the place, emails. They're really the top performing stuff is just sort of using normal sales tactics, right? It's like a salesperson knows what questions they'll get from the prospect, and they have good answers to those. They know how to expand the prospect's perception of what the challenge is to position themselves well as a suitable solution for that problem. The salesperson knows what the common objections are and how to address objections. So what is a good web page? It's a lot like that. It really just needs to emulate a sales conversation. Guide the visitor through a series of messages that answer their questions, address their objections, and have evidence, clear, compelling, specific evidence, testimonials, social proof, or data, statistics, client logos, years in business, reviews, bestseller, all those different evidence to support the answers. So I think that the best digital marketing today really aligns well with just good salesmanship, and that one of the most obvious examples of that is that salespeople know they need to address objections, but a lot of conversion copywriters and people who write websites forget to address the objection, the reason why not. I know that you guys are good at that, and you kind of have this gorgeous way of turning things on their head and asking the opposite, right? Like, why wouldn't someone, or who don't we want to talk to, right? It's I think one of your gifts. But in this example here, I'm just saying, like, ask your, talk to your top sales reps, ask them what questions they get, look at your web copy, ask yourself if you've addressed those objections and answered those questions and supported your answers with evidence. A web page without evidence is just a big pile of unsupported marketing claims. Mm-hmm. Count the number of unsupported marketing claims on your website. It may very well be quite high, in which case you've got an opportunity, cost nothing to go add social proof to your site.
Yeah, I think that is so true. And it's one of the takeaways that I had from when I first heard you speak is, and this goes to the curse of knowledge, right? So we know so much about our business, and like, mm-hmm. even if you're in the trenches as a salesperson every day, you're meeting those, you're facing those objections and overcoming them or addressing them. And then when we sit down to write web copy, it's sort of like that goes out the window, and we kind of revert to this like sloganeering and mm-hmm. cliches and colloquialisms. So when I heard you talk, I was like, oh yeah, we need a page that describes, this aspect of our business and this aspect that people don't know. And then I found in your book too, because you mentioned testimonials, you said the best marketing copy is written by the audience, not the mm-hmm. marketer. And that really turned my perspective around too. And it's really getting into the mind of the audience and literally using those client stories and testimonials to tell the story of your services. And that should be a relief to people, right? Like they don't have to sit down, and because I think most people hate, at least we hear from them that they hate having to sit down and write about their offerings and their services.
It's that goes back to Eugene Schwartz again. He said that great copy is not written, it's assembled. You gather it, collect it. So a minute ago, I said something that is 100% genuine. I genuinely believe this, that you guys have a gorgeous way of looking at problems from the other direction and finding insights through this other perspective. It might be really hard for you to write it, or even if you could write that, it wouldn't sound exactly credible if you just wrote it and posted it. But if you put my face next to it and put quotes around it, now it's not the lawyer talking, it's the witness in the witness box. It's a metaphor I use, and it's common, right? Just everything that you say, you just kind of still sound like that, the closing arguments and you're pitching. But as soon as you put quotes around a thing, it's magical. It's like the most powerful punctuation on your keyboard. That suddenly becomes the witness in the witness box. It's now a third-party endorsement. It's like disarmingly direct, usually. It's like I once analyzed Amazon, which we mentioned earlier, and literally the number of pixels on the page, half of the pixel height of an Amazon web page, a product detail page, is reviews and stars and bestseller. So maybe that's the main thing we should have on our web pages.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Right. That's where I go. I go to Amazon. Like my husband's searching for something. I'm like,
right.
No, right to the reviews.
Yep.
Right. And number of reviews too. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Everything else is marketing. When you say it's marketing, when they say it's social proof.
Mhm.
As an example, we just bought an air fryer off of Amazon, and we looked at the top two, and we chose the one that had the most reviews. Both of them were 4.5 stars.
Hmm.
And I never read any of the specs because I trust the collective consciousness. So I'm gonna, Andy, I'm gonna kind of maybe wear some clown shoes through a minefield right now. Right?
Okay.
So I have this deep aversion. Like I have an aversion to like Keurig coffee, pop country, and there's a third aversion, and that is an aversion to this. You see this with thought leaders or people selling courses or programs. A new sort of click funnel model where there's just acres of copy with, you scroll and scroll and scroll, and it's repeated calls to action. And then if you do, heaven forbid, sign up for their newsletter, then you just get carpet bombed until you either unsubscribe or buy something from them. Then you get carpet bombed some more. So am I being a bit dramatic about it? Yes, but it's still freaking annoying. And so why does that exist? Why do people, I see this, we see this in particular because we have a pretty decent book of business with thought leaders, solo professional coaches and consultants and things. And the bullshit advice they get related to what to do with their brand. This is one of the big areas that we have to help them unlearn.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from? How did such a terrible thing emerge into the world?
I love that. It's going to take me a second to unpack. There's a couple of things in there. The carpet bonding email strategy, super annoying. I'm not going to defend it. That's horrible, and just the frequency and the volume of stuff that they send. And I get too much email. It's the biggest problem in my life is my email. The advice being bullshit. I can't defend that. Obviously, there's lots of people, selling garbage information products that are low quality, that are overpriced. When really most of the information you're looking for anyway would be free. I don't recommend buying people's courses. Just go search, a little more research, and you can put together all that same advice from normal content marketers who are working hard to help you find it and trying to give it away for free. But I will defend the tall page.
Okay.
I'll defend the tall page. There is, I've never seen evidence that short pages perform better. I see lots of evidence that tall pages perform better, both in my analytics and in presumed examples like Amazon. Let's just assume that they spend millions of dollars on UX research and conversion analytics. I'm sure they do. So the logic behind the argument for a short page is like, oh, I read this thing. People have attention spans like goldfish. No one's going to read this copy, therefore I should write short copy. But just because people tend to scan or tend not to read doesn't mean we should write short pages. In my view, it means we should format our copy to be highly scannable because that aligns with visitors. That is empathetic. Highly scannable content with lots of subheads and visuals and bullet lists and internal links and bolding and italics. That's empathetic copy. It's formatted. Again, Eugene Schwartz, right? It's assembled, not written. It's about the structure of the copy that partly makes it effective. So if the person, just like a sales conversation, which we've also said, if the person doesn't see their answers, doesn't see their objection addressed, they can just keep going. A short page is just the salesperson hanging up the phone. Doesn't help. The tall page, sure, the visitor may not read it all. Of course, they're not going to read it all. There's a Nielsen Norman Group study that says that people read maybe 25% or 20% maybe of the words on a page, based on a reading speed of 250 words a minute and a bunch of pages and a bunch of analytics time on page data. So yeah, I think that tall pages convert at higher rates. They're more helpful. They're more likely to have the answer. They also rank higher. Lots of correlation studies for that. The page should be just as long as it needs to be to answer every question, address every objection, and not a word longer. Don't fluff it up. Be direct, be concise, and be highly structured with lots of formatting. But don't carpet bomb people. That's just so annoying. I'm scared to touch those buttons. They're never going to leave you alone.
I think that was one of my takeaways. And we'll pause for a question, but one of my takeaways was the skimmability. And you talked about that in Chicago when we were together. I was like, oh yeah. And as a writer, right, I was like, a little bit.
I know.
But then I let go of that. And I'm like thinking about how I look through pages. And to your point, I do kind of scroll through and I'm looking for bullets, I'm looking for pull quotes. And then if I'm really interested, I will read deeper, right? But it's all about how we capture that intention. And I think you made a nuanced distinction there. That doesn't mean a ton of fluff.
No.
It means still be concise.
Yes.
Still be to the point. Don't be, don't be salacious and, prey on emotions. Just convey it clearly and directly and come at it from audience, need, objection, just mix it in there. So that was really resonant for me. Kat, do we have questions?
We do have a question from Tim. Is a tall page a long page?
Yeah, so I think we're talking about the same thing.
Okay.
Long form content, or you could say a tall pixel height, or you could say a page with a ton of page blocks, or long form copy. It's a, if you did a screenshot of it using a screen capture tool and it was this wide because it's the page is 10,000 pixels high. Blog copy is getting longer every year. We do a survey of 1,000 bloggers every year, and the average blog post is now like 1,500 words or something like that. And that's just tall long form sales pages. There's lots of data that shows that, with one rare exception. I think it was like landing pages for financial industry or something. Unbounce has conversion rate benchmark data based on hundreds of thousands of page views. But for the most part, tall pages are higher converting pages.
So interesting. One question I will ask on behalf of someone we're working with. They're working with a leadership team who doesn't understand the power of a blog on a website. Like, they think they're connecting it to like the early days of blogging and like personal blogs and that kind of a thing. So what advice would you give to a marketing leader who's trying to let the leadership team know that a blog is an important part of a website?
It's a classic question. I'm sure everyone has different answers. I'll try to be concise. So if you don't have a blog, a website without a blog is an online brochure. That's all it is. It's a bunch of sales copy. The blog is the difference between between brochureware and a site with a reason to go back, a reason to subscribe, a reason to share, a reason to rank, a reason to visit twice. Again, content marketing versus advertising. Blog content is almost always helpful, useful articles. It has utility. It gives the Google something to rank. You have a chance of becoming visible for information intent phrases, people just looking for information. And then if you just look at the specific, if you run sites through competitive analysis tools, you can quickly see how sites that have blog content are sites that just have much more traffic. So those people don't argue against billboards. They wouldn't. They understand that that's valuable, right? I have never bought an ad or spent any money on advertising personally. We have 1.5 million visitors a year. I have 16,000 newsletter subscribers. I generate 900 leads a year. Even though we only need 50 projects, 7 million in revenue, 48 employees, 10,000 plus websites linked to our website, almost all blog posts, almost all research that we published over the years. $0 spent out of pocket in advertising. Built a pretty big, a successful little business based 100% on content marketing and inbound. If you've never seen the analytics for a website that had an effective content marketing program, go look around, go ask. It's like standing under a waterfall of demand. If you do it well enough and long enough and hard enough with enough focus and intent and a narrow enough audience, it's like owning a big mag. You don't have to buy an ad. You own a magazine. You own a TV station. What are we doing now? Right? We're just trying to be helpful. And the visibility is real. And these are people we're actually connecting with. And the cost is low and the value is high for everybody. I don't understand the argument against it.
I love it. I think that will be very helpful for the person I was talking to. Oh, that's so helpful. And it's funny. It's weird to us. Like, we live in this space, how someone could think that a blog isn't perfect.
Yeah. I want to see their browsing history. Crack open your browser and show me the history. Tell me you never go to read articles.
Yeah.
Of course they do. Everyone does.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much to be said for, I sometimes refer to it as wedding photographer marketing. So if you go to a wedding photographer site, they don't show you the bad photos and the ugly people, to be blunt. And so the idea, the getting testimonials, or the classic, just a quote only, like, it was the best experience ever, Bob S, as opposed to telling a story with a face and a name, as you mentioned earlier. So one question we always like to ask, because as Em said at the beginning, we only have defiers on. So on Bima's webcast. Is my question for you is what is most heretical? What is the most heretical thing you believe in your industry? Where in a crowded room they go crucify him,
or on a webcast. I'm going to poke the bear. You may come after me because this is really counter narrative perspective I'll share. But I think that you can do everything I just described in my case for content marketing without telling stories, even though you just mentioned it. So years and years of publishing how-to articles, kind of a weak but okay about us page, not going deeply into the history or the origin of our company. Yes, we have values. We're a B Corp. Yes, there's people, there's a team page, but I think you can grow a big brand without actually telling stories, at least not stories with a formal storytelling kind of structure. I made the case for the importance of having characters or having team pages, which are like characters, which are an element of stories. Case studies, maybe customer stories. It might just be kind of in that structure of like, problem, solution, result, which is like has a conflict, which is an element of a story. But I've been in fights in bars at conferences where, late night, the after party, someone's trying to provoke and I'll just jump in with it. I think you can grow a big brand without stories. It's heretical, I know.
I love it.
It's an unpopular perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just because marketers ruin everything, and they've ruined the word story. I mean, the science of storytelling and neuro coupling and all of that. That goes back to what you're saying about the psychology of hasn't changed. Well, part of that is the human brain is attracted to story. The problem is we call it a story when it's not. It's like message. If it doesn't come from the heart and you're not really excited to say it, then you just got a one-liner or a talk track. And so that's my slight defense of story is, like the word blessing has been stolen by religious people too. So
yeah, I'll chime in there. Like, I think we all have a tendency to overcomplicate things. So we hear story and then we buy the program, the course about telling stories and that kind of thing. When it can be so simple, it can be, I think I mentioned to you earlier about Consuela bags, right? I saw my sister-in-law have this awesome bag. She's so fashionable. She always says. I asked her where she got it. She said Consuela. I looked them up online. I went to their giving back page and I saw how they gave away bags to women who were doing awesome things in their communities. But those stories were told by social media, like Instagram posts, right? So I just skimmed through, right? And I saw the story, not beginning, middle, and written, right? But we tell stories all the time in lots of different ways. So I think as people were like, oh, I need to take a course, I need to sit down. No, it can be so much simpler than that, and not overdo it.
Yeah, that there's no replacement for that. Like, I don't know what to call it if it's not a story, but just like the moment when the person feels that the difference was made, or there was some impact in that case, like there's someone who had that outcome and it mattered. That's something that is extremely powerful in marketing. I don't think of that as a story. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be so down on stories. But I know that that's done and done well, and I recommend that. Like I said, loss aversion, or psychology, show people what they're going to miss if they don't do this. You can do that with an example. Is that a story? Maybe you could define it as a story, but I just think it's like, every conference you go to, back when there were conferences, there's like a storytelling track, or there's someone who's giving, like, it seems like ubiquitous. Like if you have a conference, you have to have a storytelling teacher. And I understand that that's a lot how the brain works and human narrative and psychology. And, I can remember the lyrics to 10 million songs, but I only know 2 phone numbers. Why? Because language is how the brain works, but that's, but yeah, I'm going to stick with it that like the formal long form storytelling is optional. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it is possible to build a brand without it.
Well, we encourage you continuing to be heretical because we think that's cool. Looks like we have a couple more questions coming up. Kat, you want to let us know what they are?
Yes, it looks like we have a question from Samantha. What type of content marketing works well right now, besides beyond blogs?
Well, so for the topics, there's 2 formats that tend to perform the best. One is original research, which makes the website the primary source for new information and puts you in a completely different category. And it's just has huge, huge advantages. there's almost two kinds of content programs, those that publish new original research and those that don't. Having said that, I think research can be done on a shoestring budget. I don't think you necessarily need to have like it doesn't have to be a big project. I publish 3 or 4 little studies a year. They're pretty much shoestring, and the visitors don't expect them to be like, clinical phase 3 trial or something. The other type is something that River knows intimately, and that is the counter narrative opinion. You guys just asked me for a heretical perspective. That is powerful content. So original research and strong opinion are the two things, and there's studies about this, the two formats for content that consistently outperform, at least in 2 regards. One is their ability to attract links, which is partly for SEO. The other is their ability to get engagement, which is partly about social media. If you're asking just about the formats, any content that you upgrade from text to a video is going to be more engaging. I don't think anybody would read the transcript of this conversation, but because we are people and you can see our faces and hear our tones of voice, this is probably much more engaging. So upgrade the format from text to video whenever you can. One final quick thought about something that improves every format and is also evidenced in this moment is collaborative content. Anytime that you include other people in your content, interview someone, do a roundup, add contributor quotes to any piece. I personally would never write an article without contributor quotes. It's just a rule of ours. In fact, we had women experts to every article we write. It's something we decided to do, and now we do it. So a journalist would never write an article, never publish a story without a source. Why do content marketers keep writing articles without contributor quotes? We're sort of in a post single point of view era for content. Almost all content, probably all content should be collaborative, at least in some way.
Preach. The former journalist in me was just like, yes. The editor who got copy to her desk without sourcing, I was throw it right back. So yeah.
I know, yeah, it's not enough, insufficient.
No.
Yeah,
I think also with language in particular, there's the commodity side. That's the copywriting. You got to fill up the web page, so you write it as well as possible. But if you go back and look at like a Red Wing ad or a Stetson ad from the pre-mass media era, that's some writing. Those are brilliantly done. Often they used, a lot of the, authors of that period got their start writing that kind of copy because it's story in a good way. What I'm interested in, if you've seen any data on the more like artful language, like rather than give those speeds and feeds, what we call the ingredient panel, where they talk more about, and it's more poetry actually. So like every single one of our clients has a root belief that we created, and if they follow our counsel, it's the first thing that people see on the web, on the homepage, on that hero image. It's poetic, it's provocative. Do you see any data that shows that more artful approach to language is better than being more technical?
Oh, I probably should have data, because about an hour and a half ago, I just recorded a video for YouTube that made the case that the homepage headline should be specific and descriptive and non-poetic. But do I have data for it? Yes, there is a way there is some data for that. But it comes with some asterisks. So if you take a screenshot of a homepage that has a clever or poetic or values-driven headline that isn't specific about what the company does, and upload that to usabilityhub.com, and then post the question, what does this company do? It will give that 5-second test to a panel of people, not your target audience. So there's one of your caveats. And they'll see the page, they'll see the screenshot for 5 seconds, and then they'll see the question and they'll type an answer. You'll get the results within like 10 minutes. And if you publish something that doesn't have a clear, specific homepage header, the H1 tag, then it's very likely that the visitor won't know what the company does. So the clever or values-driven or interesting sort of copy at the very top of the homepage assumes that the visitor knows what this company does already. It also,
I just want to challenge. I think we want to challenge that here, because
okay, great.
What we're talking about when we recommend this is going into the subconscious or the unspoken part of the mind, where the Jungian psychology aspect of decision making and attention, what you give your attention to. And what we're looking for is, we always say this, is the first thing they should see is not what. It's not clarity. Clarity is boring as hell, because they can decide they don't want that. But if it's intriguing and it triggers curiosity, unless you're a psychopath, you have to scroll down. And then you can figure out what they do. And it happens within seconds, because nobody only goes to one page, a homepage, I don't really think, if it's intriguing and stops and goes, I don't know what these people do, forget it. It's when it's clever and then it becomes insipid that I think is the issue.
Oh, you've triggered me. I love this. I want to collaborate with you on this because that's the opposite of my perspective, actually. I will make a strong case for being boring in the header, because let's assume that the visitor doesn't know what this company does. Their first question is, am I in the right place?
Not subconsciously.
But if they can't tell what the company does,
but not
will they scroll or will they hit the back
button? It's
button?
about trust. It's mammalian. It's a mammalian response. It's not a neocortex response.
But the source of this visitor, they saw there were 500 other websites, wherever they came from to come here. They know that, I mean, competition is fierce. So if you don't quickly answer the question, am I in the right place? I think we should be clever. I think we should be interesting and differentiate and connect with psychology in the next page block. The one down, just save those 500 pixels for you are here and name the business category. Plus, Justin, this is a disaster for SEO. I mean, unless you have a budget or other plans, or you just get your traffic all comes from referrals, or the key phrase you would like to target, you have no chance of ranking for anyway. That is critical real estate for indicating relevance, and using a keyword focused header correlates with search rankings. Mine currently says Chicago Web Design and Development Company. Does it hurt lead generation? Does it discourage scrolling? I mean, it performs quite well in search. We rank for the phrase, and that's our most important phrase. But this is I love this. This is really interesting. I literally just recorded a video for YouTube like an hour ago where I made the case that you should be clear, clever, clever, clever. Like I put clarity in the homepage header.
Well,
I'll jump in here. I think I love that clear, clever, clever. I think our take would be like evoke curiosity, right? Evoke curiosity. And I don't necessarily, for me, I believe in our root belief and our message being at the top. And we often have an underline, or what we call a bridge statement that brings that clarity into that first block. And then the rest is like, clarity. So I think we're closer than, I mean, I am not trying to just like make everyone.
No, it's
a little bit.
I have a deck. I have a presentation where I have screenshots of lots of sites like that, and I sort of make fun of them. And what it sounds like is there's a visual hierarchy at every scroll depth on every web page. It's how does this design control the eye? And whatever's the biggest thing, or the thing with the most white space around it, or the thing with contrasting color, that's the top of the visual hierarchy. So frequently that is the homepage header. Why wouldn't you make the top of the visual hierarchy also be the thing that is the most important thing to the visitor? Like when you look at that, I look at these and I say, why don't you just flip that and make the H1 descriptive and then be clever in the subtext below it. So that's similarly what you call the bridge statement. I've said, like, you got it backwards. That should be your header. The search thing isn't really arguable because SEO kind of works that way. You should name your book the thing that people are looking for if you want people to check it out of the library.
Yeah.
But it's a really some brands that do what you suggested are famous brands and don't have to worry about it. Like I bet if we went to Airbnb's homepage right now, they'd have something cool. They won't say whatever, rent from who, I don't know what they would. It's not a keyword focused header if we looked at Airbnb or Etsy or any of them. But this is a great debate, and it makes me want to like write about it specifically and do point counterpoint.
Yeah, and we're already getting calls in the chat for a sequel, which we've never done before, but we might in this case. I wanted to point out one thing before we get, I think there's a few more questions. I just wanted to point out, I think it depends on your brand strategy significantly. If you are building a brand that's highly reliant on conversion or lead gen, then I can see where you're coming from. If you're building a brand where your website is poetry in the sense like professional services or some other sort of brand building strategy that is much more emotional based, then I go with our school of thought of lead with the art and then let them figure it out from there. So maybe that's our centrist view that we can find.
Yeah, and here's some middle ground or maybe a compass to guide all the thinking, which is something that Brian Massey Conversion Sciences, also in Austin. My
Yeah,
friend
I
Brian.
actually just had was in of all things, a full moon ceremony with him. So
Really?
yeah.
I'm scared to ask.
We were standing by the fire and he and I had the same discussion. You're just nicer about it.
We should
So,
ask Brian. Yeah.
I
Well,
did.
a quote from Brian, I credit him. He said, best practices are good hypotheses. So we are having this conversation in absence of an actual brand or website or target audience. We're not doing empathy at all. We're just sort of debating the concept, which would work differently for different audiences and for different websites and different, different moments when that person is visiting, what their intent is, what the traffic source was. It's much more nuanced than it sounds. So I think an important point is what you're hearing here and what you hear anywhere about general advice. It's really just a hypothesis. Just go test it, see what's working for you. But if you're worried about the person knowing where they are, or there's nothing else above the fold that indicates the category you're in, you might not pass the 5-second test on Usability Hub.
Got it. All right, Kat, I know we have a few more questions in the Q&A and in the chat. Do you want to jump in here?
Yes. Okay, we have one from Susan about internal marketing communications. Would you say the same principle of tall page formatted content, i.e. newsletter, intranet, that's submitted by employees applies, therefore contributing to workplace culture, employees connected, engagement, and morale?
Likely, yes. I don't see a great difference in the psychology of an internal, and brain science and cognitive biases are what they are, regardless of who this visitor might be. It's a similar question to what we get about employer brand and how are these pages, how is a career page different from a service page? Well, in the end, like the early greats of marketing would say, it's just about that person. What are their needs? What are their concerns? And how much text do you need? What pixel height do you need? How many page blocks do you need to bring the person around to your way of thinking and trigger the behavior that you're, whether it's a job applicant or, or whether it's just internal. Probably, people in our internal communications are extremely engaged. They're kind of a captive audience. They work here. So in some ways, I'd worry less about tall content. These people, the sender of the email or the page they landed on have extreme trust because the person literally works at that company. So I'd worry less about some of the, the best practices for a visitor that knows where the back button is and might leave and never come back. Because this person's literally already on your team.
Excellent. Okay. We also have this from Tim. Andy, I have an objection to the evolution of marketing from CRM to ABM, etc. Specifically with ABM, we seem to be pulling away from customer at the center. Your thoughts?
Oh, I love ABM, but I'm not sure that I do it in the same way that others do. The customer is more certainly at the center of what you're doing if you're doing account-based marketing. Because you built the marketing for a specific person. A lot of content marketing is very slow and indirect, and one of the objections to it is that it's just too vague and not targeted, and it's inefficient because a lot of the content gets consumed by people that are not the target audience. Account-based marketing is like zero waste marketing, everything. So next week I'm giving a webinar about bank websites. I'm presenting some research that we did on bank websites. I'm giving best practices. I'm analyzing a bunch of bank websites. Every attendee, there's only 18 signed up so far. That's plenty, right? It's about quality, not quantity. Every attendee is a decision maker at a bank. So I am making something it's like a gift. It's way more targeted. Now, I don't know what account-based marketing means for others. I think a lot of people have like a high-tech way of doing it using platforms and ad spend and other stuff. I just made a webinar, reached out to a bunch of people who with this job title of that industry on LinkedIn, invited them. I've got some registrants. I'm going to teach bank websites. I am highly certain that each person on that will get value and that all of them are potential prospects for us.
That is brilliant right there. River may be stealing that.
That's an awesome.
Thank you.
I love it. Okay, another one from Tim. Andy, what tools do you recommend, if any, outside of Google Analytics that simplify the volumes of data in a meaningful way?
I mentioned Hotjar briefly. Hotjar has scroll heat maps, so you can see what percentage of people make it how far down a page. It also has click heat maps, which is much easier to read than Google Analytics, where you can see like little color blobs for where people click. But beyond that, it has screen recordings. So they're so compelling that it's hard not to overvalue them. You should watch 15 or 20 before you begin to conclude anything. But you can literally see where people click. You can watch when they pause. You can almost imagine what their eyes are doing. So it reveals false positives in analytics. I was watching screen recordings for a find a food pantry tool. And it's like, oh, everyone's using this feature for like, when are they open? But I watched all these recordings and people who clicked when are they open always closed it again because they needed food right now. So I wouldn't have known without watching a ton of screen recordings that the when they're open is sort of irrelevant. Everyone needs food now is mostly how people were using the tool. So Hotjar, the screen recordings, click heat maps, and scroll heat maps, none of that is done well by Google Analytics. I'm going to share a link to my account-based marketing. There's a video in my step-by-step process. It's sort of account-based content marketing. That's maybe why it's different than what you hear a lot about content marketing or account-based ABM.
That's awesome. And I put that in the chat as well about Hotjar. We only have a few minutes left. So if are there any other questions? Obviously you can see Andy is a wealth of information and such a great source for all those burning questions. Just wait to see. Andy, while people are thinking of that, I would love for you to touch on quickly. We talked earlier about the abandoned spaceship and that being an idea of websites. So can you just give everyone that little analogy?
Yeah, people say, oh, it's hard to differentiate. Not if you show your people. You know, it's hard to look personal. Not if you show your people. I mean, if I made I have made checklists. Make a checklist of all the things that should be on a normal service page. Faces of your team would be one of those. It's sort of ironic. I think you heard me say this maybe once, but big companies are always trying to look smaller and little companies are always trying to look bigger, which is weird. Why would that? Yeah. What's wrong with who you are? Well, really, everyone should just try to look more personal, more human. Again, Facebook, is such a popular site, and it has a lot to do with the compelling nature of human face imagery. It's just magnetic. It's almost always at the top of the visual hierarchy. So yeah, put yourself on your website. Put yourself on it, and even your your company's social bio. Don't tweet from behind a logo if you can help it. You be as human as you can anywhere you are present. It gives you a natural advantage, and it's just people much more likely to connect with you.
Awesome, thank you so much. So everyone, give our love to Andy, right? Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for sharing the link. If you go to Orbit's website, you'll see so much information. And I do highly recommend the book. As I said, I'm working my way through it. And then just note to everybody on this webcast, we will reconvene in February. We're going to take January off. And in February, we'll have Chris Ronzio, who is the founder of Trainual, joining us. So he is definitely a defier. I've had the pleasure of meeting him several years ago, and his company is taking off. So really looking forward to that. Thanks to everybody. We'll also be sending out a recording of today's webcast, and we'll drop it into the Being Marketers community. And one last plug for the community. We do hope you join if you're not a member. There's content that is as awesome as this in there all of the time. And any last words from anybody?
Thank you, Andy. That was fun. I think we should do a round two.
We should. I want more of your insights on this. It's a strong case, and we will definitely get into this more. I love that. Okay. Thank you for the invite, Emily, and for last night. And Justin, yeah, let's do this again soon.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Take care.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.